We're live, YouTube live. We are live, John. How about that?
It's outstanding to be alive here, 6 feet above instead of 6 feet below.
It's weird, though, because it's Friday. So if you're happen to finding us here on this YouTube live, we usually do this on Friday, but we got scheduling snafus a little bit, or we usually do this on Thursday. So we're doing this on Friday, March the 21st.
21st, exactly right.
I got it. So we record on Thursdays about 6:15. It's a good way to find us on YouTube Live to interact with us while the show's kind of going on. We kind of chit-chat a little bit on the live, and then we turn the real mics on that you get with the shows on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Any favorite podcast system?
Wherever you get your podcasts is what they say, John.
Podbean.
Podbean? Are we on Podbean, though?
I don't
We might not be on Podbean.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Anyway, we're going to be talking about gracious acceptance today. So this is episode 304 on gracious acceptance. Just a word combo there, gracious acceptance. I guess I could have just said acceptance, but added the word gracious.
I like the gracious.
You do you?
Yeah, I like the word gracious.
What do you like about the word gracious?
Well, it means something that's unconditional. In other words, something that you don't necessarily deserve. You receive it. And so you accept something.
I was onto something.
You were. You are.
Can I take ownership of that on the actual podcast recording?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Yes, you can.
You ready, Neil? Whenever you are. All right. Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, and I am your main host. Messing up my phone. Chris Gazik on Through a Therapist's Eyes, hanging out here with John Pope today.
Good to be here with you.
All right, we are missing Miss Victoria today. She is going to be dealing with her kids, I think.
That's right.
She's got kid duty. And this is also like a Friday.
She's got toddlers.
A toddler.
A
That's all she needs.
Well, her husband, but he's not a toddler.
He's not a toddler. Josh is a good man.
Josh is.
Shout out, brother. We love you. We're going to be talking about gracious acceptance today on episode 304. So on March the 21st, we are going to find a way without Miss Victoria Pendergrass. So this is where you get insights from a panel of therapists in your car or at home, but knowing is not delivery of therapy services in any way. The 3 content questions that we have today with gracious acceptance is: how do I respond to the situations that require me to accept something I don't agree with or can't control? Boy, people mess with the issue of control, John. Number 2, what does gracious acceptance look like in my relationship with others? And how can I practice acceptance without feeling like I'm giving up or compromising my values? Control and acceptance. I feel like these are big issues for people. So got the book Through a Therapist's Eyes, Volume 2, that is out, Re-Understanding Your Marriage and Becoming Your Best as a Spouse. I am excited about that project. I really want you to go check it out, look at it. It's real therapy moments, each chapter, short, digestible chapters. I call them the bathroom books, John, because you can take them to the bathroom and enjoy them, right?
Oh, that just brings up all sorts of things to the imagination.
But they're that short.
They're that short. They're like little vignettes.
Little vignettes.
Right.
And they will definitely trigger thoughtfulness. And the first one was about self. So subscribe, click the bell, hit somebody up the head to tell them about YouTube Lives, review on Apple Podcasts. It all helps us out.
5.0.
Go, Joe. Go, John.
Gotta have a 5.0. Well, if you don't. In other words, say wonderful things about us because we are wonderful.
Well, listen, we really do this as a free service to the world, to you. Mm-hmm. And we hope that you get some information. We want to blow up stereotypes and myths, disseminate information about our life's work and our passion, which is mental health and substance abuse. Your job, if you like our content, is to really help us by doing that subscription and telling people and helping us grow. We haven't had a new YouTube Live member in a minute. So we're going to need to bump that up. I really need you to tell somebody.
I got a question for you, and that's, we're not trying to give advice or anything of that sort.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not the delivery of services or psychological or emotional.
Correct.
Counseling services.
I said that today.
You did?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Not the delivery of therapy services.
I had a brain
anyway.
infarction.
I got it in. Usually Victoria likes to correct me if I miss that. Very valuable line to cover ourselves because we are therapists in our day job. So, but this is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. So, John, what do you think about our topic here? Gracious acceptance. What do you think?
Well, I think it's there might even be gracious acceptance could also mean radical acceptance. Could it mean
that's a clinical term?
Okay. Yeah, and unconditional acceptance, and yet that doesn't necessarily mean that you are some sort of doormat or that you're acquiescing to somebody's ill behavior.
No, we don't do that. No, we don't subscribe to anything along those lines.
Okay.
Either.
I just wanted to
it's interesting. Unconditional acceptance. I don't think I've ever heard that term before. Those two word combinations. Mm-hmm. It's usually unconditional love. Mm-hmm. Is there an unconditional acceptance? I mean, that's unconditional love. They seem to be.
Yeah, well, it is. And it's a term of art. And we said we're going to look at it in terms of more of a secular aspect, but it's a theological concept.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This whole show, and actually the sort of theme this week that I've kind of went with was a little bit of a substance abuse theme with regular topics. Numbing out, survivor mode was what we talked about last week. I forget what we talked about the week before that. Do you know, John, Neil? He's going to look it up and tell me, but it's... Oh, yes, of course. The misleading diagnosis of alcohol use disorder. That kind of actually drives me crazy, that one. But that was a good way to start off.
Well, that was a good discussion.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree. And then the survivor mode is a family dynamic. This actually is the reason at the end of the month here, the 3rd, the real scoop is the reason why I had this is a provocative thought that I have dealt with in therapy. I want to put this out there different than our 3 questions that we just put out there for you to think about. But, the provocative thought that came up in therapy, should we just accept the person in our lives struggling with addiction? That would be gracious acceptance, unconditional acceptance, but that's a kind of really a double-edged sword.
Right.
In a marriage or in a close relationship, how do we manage that? And then also, I get questions, John, in therapy, what about my child? People say that I should put them out or put them on the street. They're abusing the home. They're stealing my stuff. It's tough. So, what might the panel say or conclude about how do we manage that with kids? And I'm sure you have pre-thoughts about that, John, but we'll sprinkle that in a little bit.
Okay.
And then circle back around at the end to see, really where do we land on, that's tough, man. If your husband or wife's got addiction, do you stick it out? Mm-hmm. If your kiddo has drug or alcohol addiction, do you put them out or not? Like, how does that work? It's a real hairbender of issues there.
I think there has to be some sort of perseverance to be able to stick with someone, but that may not necessarily work out where the person would stay in the house. In other words, you're doing something that ultimately would be best for your loved one that is going through that, and the best thing may for them not to be in the house. But that's not. Yeah. But it's not abandoning them.
Right. There's a mouthful that you just said.
Yeah.
It's a lot there.
And I think it's a fine line, and I think that's why it takes people forever to figure these things out.
Years.
Years.
Years of pain before either things break down or they make a decision, or, I had a lady on the show, The Weight of a Feather, where her son had heroin addiction issues and all, and how they had to cope with that. And finally it was, look, you have to leave our house, you're going to treatment, you don't have any choice, kind of a scenario. So there's all kinds of things that ride with that, and it's quite the predicament. But what are we talking about, John, when we talk about gracious acceptance? What does this even mean to you?
Well, grace is something that is sort of, grace is getting something, and it's love that you don't necessarily deserve, you don't necessarily earn. It's given, and it's given in a sense that there's no strings involved with it. And so gracious acceptance would be the sort of like the turn of the coin, the obverse of the coin, which would be if somebody gives you something and it's and they give it to you as a gift without any strings, graciously, you accept it graciously, without strings, and that you acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the person that gives the gift doesn't necessarily expect somebody to be thankful for it, but a thankful person would say, "Okay, thank you for this gift," and so it's gracious acceptance.
Yeah, it's. I love that. Thank you. I love the way your brain wraps around that, because I think what I was kind of going on is we could talk about acceptance, and we have you mentioned the term radical acceptance. That's a part of the DVT program. Marshall Lanahan kind of created some of that program, and these are skills in the therapy world around acceptance that we do talk about and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But the gracious part of it to me is a relational, and we want to think about this a little bit in relation to somebody. You're giving that acceptance to them, which is a really hard thing to do. We want to judge, we want to correct, we want to parent our children, and and help our spouse, and change things for the better.
So in other words, you give a person space.
Yeah,
but it's a safe space,
right?
And I think that's what we're in a therapist right now. We're in your office,
right? And
we have some equipment in here, but it's a very relaxed place where a person can feel free to be him or herself.
Yeah, in the
authentic
book,
self.
In the book that I wrote about marriage, I call it the golden egg. The golden egg is that sacred space between two people, that are married. That you're creating a high level of trust, emotional safety, like that golden egg that you can say anything that you feel you need to or want to say. Like that's. Boy, it's such a. Your face just changed. What happened?
It's just that you feel so loved that you don't have to put on airs. You can be your authentic self,
right? Your
vulnerable self, and know that person's not going to put demands on you that are their projection of their stuff onto you.
They're accepting you,
right?
It's really a hard thing. I feel like, John, to be in. And then when you get in a space to preserve that golden egg, I mean, it can easily be cracked.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to get another egg and build it. I mean, that's...
Well, and that's the thing is it's a process. Because I think the more you do it, or more that you live it authentically, or you be it, or whatever word you want to use or term, is that you would need to be able to do that more and more. But there are going to be times when
it's challenged.
It's challenged, yeah.
You did what last week, John? When Joy calls you John Nelson, it's being challenged, isn't it?
I like the time that she followed me out of the house and she just put her hands right onto the hood of the car.
You have said that one other time on the show, brother, and I've never forgotten that.
Well,
because I see you enjoy you're older now. You've been married for a super long time. Your relationship is amazing. At least from the outside looking in.
We weren't super old,
right?
So she's not old. She's much younger than I.
That was Joy and John in conflict with her, stopping the car from moving.
I am very fortunate. If anybody's taught me anything about gracious acceptance is Joy.
Yeah.
And she's modeled it quite well.
Yeah, you've been able to get to that golden egg space.
Yeah.
But then you get out of it, don't you?
Oh,
you have to get back in it and then out of it. It's like it's a constant checks and balance.
Right. And you want to make that your equilibrium in your relationship if you can. But life happens.
So the difference between acceptance and resignation is something to think about when we're thinking about what are we talking about, because people will be resigned into a situation as opposed to truly being able to be in a place of acceptance. I've got a chapter in my book somewhere. There it is. Accepting things and apart is a part of your emotional growth. It's chapter 11. And I love the name of that chapter, and to read through that chapter, that's in the first book, not the second one. And it has a do and don't, as all my chapters do. Do, accept limitation, events, and characteristics. Don't resist and fight against what is true. And I'll have an example of that later on. But I mean, when you try to get into a place of acceptance, you're resisting our natural tendency to fight something. And that's different than just like being resigned. You just sort of, I guess a doctor described I have depression, so I'm resigned to this diagnosis, and that's just what I'm going to experience.
I will always be like this.
One of my favorite characters in Winnie the Pooh.
Right. Eeyore. Yeah.
I guess I'll just go eat worms.
He's dysthymic.
Terribly dysthymic.
Yeah.
Dysthymic is a diagnostic word that's like kind of like depression, just not as bad low, but just
Debbie Downer on Saturday Night Live.
That stays Debbie downed. So while both acceptance and resignation involve acknowledging the situation, you're doing an active step with accepting, or proactive step of acknowledging and embracing that reality. While resignation, you're just passive. This is going to happen to me. Helpless, hopeless.
Right.
Can't do anything
and that's
about
the
it.
difference, I think, in terms of this radical acceptance or this gracious acceptance, is that it has hope in it. It's not helplessness. It's hopefulness that there will be this sort of interaction and growth that would take place. So it's an organic thing.
Absolutely.
So it's life affirming.
Do you ever quote the Serenity Prayer?
Yes. Do you want to do that right now?
I don't think this whole topic, when we talk about dealing with accepting your reality and, not being a doormat, like you were saying before, like I cannot stand, doormat passive personality situations. Like you are in therapy with me, we're not going to be advocating for anything that's ever at all passive.
But I think the Serenity Prayer does stimulate people, the courage to change the things I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a 3 lines of just power, if you ask me, because we also don't want to get, aggressive. I mean, I'm not going to be telling people to go yelling and, go throw down, throw hands to get what you want or whatever. But the Serenity Prayer, when we talk about accepting things and not being in resignation, it's just such a wonderful balance. The serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Those are the 3 lines in the Serenity Prayer.
Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time. Now, here's a question. So that's being in the now, in the here and now, and that would go with mindfulness.
Right.
But there's another thing. There's another aspect of it. Would you mind if I?
You're intriguing me.
Okay. And I'm going to take it away from the religious aspect of it, okay?
Right.
Accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. Taking the world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that all things will be made right. And that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy forever.
I love that. I just watched a movie last night, Spaceman.
Okay.
You ever seen Spaceman?
Who's in that?
It was a really well done. What's his name? Just brain farting. Who was Happy Gilmore? Adam Sandler. It was a really well done Adam Sandler movie where he.
Well, that's the exception.
No, come on. You don't like Adam Sandler?
Yes. Do you sing the Hanukkah song?
I love the Hanukkah song.
Okay.
Adam Sandler.
I like Adam Sandler. I really do. I think he has good values.
Well, he had a different role in this movie. And so the role in this movie was he was an astronaut, and it was a single person mission, and he was going to Japan. He was going to Jupiter, where there was a mysterious cloud that had shown up for the last few years, and we were trying to research what's going on out there. Yes. On the way, he gets a stowaway on the spaceship, and it's like this alien crawly creature, and they really form a bond that is so strong, and it was so emotionally powerful. The theme of the movie is he was really shut down, avoidant. Our last show,
Right.
he was every bit of numbed out to his wife, and his wife was leaving.
Well, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because he's avoiding life. He's going all the way to Jupiter. Yeah.
Literally.
Right.
And so this
going
alien
out of this world
was so like, read the things that you said again with Serenity Prayer.
Okay. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking the world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that all things will be made right if I surrender, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy in the next.
So in the movie, the alien creature, they developed a name for him called Hamas. Hamesh, something like that.
Not Hamas.
Not Hamas. Humish, we'll call it Hamas. Anyway, we'll call him H. H was the alien, and he was so soothing to Adam, but he was trying to help Adam understand and give him graciousness because he's been studying the humans, basically. He called him skinny human. Skinny human. Do you think about da-da-da-da-da? And he was like, you know what, though? Hamas was, Humans was very clear that the universe is exactly the way that it's supposed to be, and you just accept the universe as it is. And if you do that, you go along with everything that's going on around you, and you go with the grain.
You go with the flow.
Peace.
Yeah, okay.
You have peace. But he was fighting, you see, and he was bringing misery onto himself, and he was numbing out, shutting down, struggling with such isolation.
Therapeutic change. How does that happen?
Good.
Okay. Well, here's my question. I mean, my thought about this is that you intentionally see the world, that you're not the one that's ultimately in control, that you accept the facts that there's things you cannot change in your life.
Yep.
And you change your attitude. So things do change. You do change, but your environment doesn't necessarily change. And so you could have a sense of freedom. There's a sense of freedom even in the worst of circumstances.
It's just interesting, John, the way I got a little bit of a feeling there as I was just listening to you, and I feel compelled. This is why I land on the Serenity Prayer.
Yeah.
Because when we start talking about things that you can't change and things that you have to just accept, there's a little piece of me that just bugs out. That's why I love the lines serenity. Oh, what a beautiful word, to accept the things that you can't change. But I love that courage.
The courage to change the things you can.
In your personality, in your circumstances, in your environment, in your community, in your family, in your church, in your
society, civil rights, to be able to do all of those things that you need to do, one needs to do, and seek that, but also realize the world's sometimes going to push back really hard on you, but that doesn't necessarily need to take away your serenity, your peace.
And the wisdom to know which thing at this moment is the thing. Something that you have to accept or something that you have to change. It's so dynamic.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was listening. Yeah, the Serenity Prayer to me just locks it all in place.
Reinhold Niebuhr is the one that wrote it, AA uses it, and all the
from day one.
Right.
It is a major part of recovery in the substance abuse community, and probably one of the reasons why I think my brain is influenced in working with recovery issues to even do a combination like gracious acceptance, because I think that does pull into. Again, part of our primary questions, how do we manage your spouse who has addiction, or how do we manage a child who has addiction and be able to graciously accept them? I mean, it really is a hell of a dynamic. Let's move on a little bit to how do we have this piece of acceptance in mental health, like the impact of acceptance on therapy. Like, do you know much about ACT therapy?
I've been studying it up.
Have you been studying up, learning up on it? Huh?
Oh, I have. I do. I want you to go ahead and teach me more about it. I know about fear.
If you've been studying, you probably got more than me, because it's a little bit of a new. But basically, we want to increase psychological flexibility. which involves accepting the thoughts and feelings that you have, and then really combining mindfulness and being present while then taking actions aligned with your values rather than trying to control or avoid difficult experiences. That's a summary of ACT. I mean, I think it's a natural progression from, the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and
it's in the family.
They really are, aren't they?
Yeah.
The wheelhouse. I like that word.
Wheelhouse. But because I think in terms of this as an ancillary, I'm not a big ACT person, but I'm not against it. I'm for it. It's just not something that I grew up with in my training.
You got a little West Virginian in you.
Yeah.
I like the I'm not against it.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was awesome. I know you spent some time in my state.
Yeah, I did. It's right, cheer.
Yeah. ACT is cool. I mean, I added it in here because it seems like, it has some primary pieces, though, that drive really at, the primary issue of acceptance.
It does, but it's a serenity prayer in itself because it accepts your thoughts and emotions. So
right.
Grant me this serenity, right?
Yeah.
Choose the things you can change. With courage, then take action.
You know what? I didn't think about that, but you're totally on point.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm saying. Like the ACT stuff seems sort of natural to me.
And this is not a test that high school students dread.
What do you mean?
The ACT.
Oh, this is you got dad jokes, John. You got dad jokes.
I'm a dad.
You are a dad.
I'm a granddad.
You are a granddad as well. So this idea of acceptance in therapy, do you use it much? Radical acceptance, acceptance therapy?
I do.
I feel like motivational interviewing is kind of in that same.
Yeah, it is. It is. The problem and the criticism for ACT, and I don't. And this is I'm going to wonk out on it. Is
all right.
That people think of it as the be all end all. It was. And of course, EMDR is the new thing that people are into. It's useful. It's a tool. But it's not salvation.
Meaning ACT is not the end all be all.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I don't think it ever was intended to be that way.
No, listen. All therapy modalities to me are just that. A little bit of a model. A little bit of a framework.
Right. If it works,
mm-hmm.
It works if you work it, just like they say in AA.
It's a phrase. It works if you work it.
Yeah. So if this is the modality, for me, existentialism works. Okay. But I don't have a lot of my clients that groove on that.
Yeah, no.
It's
a weird... sort of weird stuff in therapy.
Yeah.
I agree. But it's cool stuff. I agree. Gestalt's similar to me in that way. Like
right.
Gestalt therapy.
And I have used Gestalt techniques like the empty chair very effectively, but I am not a Gestaltist.
Yeah, same deal. You have to be with somebody. And honestly, therapists out there, when we get, compassion fatigue is what we call it now, or what the new phrase is, I don't know. Burnout, we used to call it. Having gracious acceptance for your clients is tough sometimes. We have to learn to do that.
If you hear the same thing, this is the thing, and this is where I think it needs to be in families, and families where there's dysfunction. And let's say you have a person that is the non-anxious presence in a family, okay?
Who are those people?
Okay. I think there's always...
Neil might be that guy.
Neil is that guy.
He smiles. He shakes his head.
Not every family has any of that going on.
Yeah, no.
But there has to be someone in someone's life that is the non-anxious presence that's not... And that a person that is... where they can go and just have that sense that they will always be accepted. But I have, like with clients, they say over and over and over again the same old thing over and over, and you challenge them. You don't, they get stuck in that rut. And how do you encourage it? How do you not give up on them? And the thing is that there is a form of therapy that says never give up. Never give up with your client. Always have faith that client will do well.
And sometimes, I will tell my couples this for sure, John. Just listening to you took me to many couples sessions where I don't have any problem saying, look, you're both here. You clearly have some interest in this being in a better place than it is. And whether you have hope about that or not, I will contain that for you for a little while.
Yeah.
I will have hope for you.
Boy, I like how that's said, how you say that.
Right. So that I will hold that place at least for a time, 5 sessions or whatever, so that we can get, going into a different direction and y'all take it.
I think in terms of Sam Gamgee in Lord of the Rings, I'm geeking out again.
Go with it, brother.
Okay. He picks up Frodo, who carries the ring, and he picks up Frodo during that time. And
Sam and Frodo.
Carrying that. So
powerful example of friendship.
Yeah. When you're in that sacred moment with the golden egg and the ring.
Yeah,
Okay. You basically are carrying that couple.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
But you're not at the same time doing their work.
No.
They're having.
No, boundary very important that this is your life, your thing, but it's just when your client or even individually is like, look, I don't have any hope anymore. I am so burnt out and done with life. Like, you can contain some of that and be with somebody and be a hope generator.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing to try to get in with somebody where you create. Okay, so anyway, back to the idea of the role of acceptance. I mentioned chapter 11. I have an example, John, of
That's not bankruptcy.
No.
Chapter 11, bankruptcy. No.
Okay. Here, I thought you were going to William Covey's the emotional checking account. I have a whole issue with that. No, this is, I thought it was a good example, a real life living example of like what some consequences can be when you're not in a place of acceptance when you get information. Yeah. So I was in high school, John. Cute girl, Angie was her name.
Angie, that's when that song came out. Angie.
Yeah, man, I had the hots for Angie. I thought she was cute and I wanted to go out on a date with her. Kind of got a date. We got a hangout thing.
You got that Rolling Stone song going out.
Yeah, what?
Rolling Stone song called Angie.
Oh, well, this wasn't her. This was a different Angie. I can't take credit there.
Okay.
Anyway, so I went to this place that I worked. It was a really cool night. We were hanging out at the ski lodge in Ogilvy, right?
Oh, okay. I know where
I actually found, it's such a kid thing, I actually found a necklace and gave that to her that night. Yeah, I did.
God, oh, man.
Terrible.
And they called it puppy love.
And they called it, yeah. And so it was a fun night. I don't even know what we were doing, hanging out. We were just walking around and all. And, John, I got the friendship speech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever got the friendship speech? How many times have you gotten the friendship speech?
Numerous times.
It's so rough.
I want you to do my wedding. I want you to be, I want you to marry me.
Oh, no, okay. Being the friend.
Yeah. And what they meant was for me to do
the wedding.
Do the wedding.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you're interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got the friendship speech, and needless to say, I wasn't exactly in the acceptance mode that particular night. Definitely pissed me off, or I got frustrated or sad or whatever. I'm sure I was just, disappointed in my feels, as the kids say nowadays. And so I drove her home and dropped her off, and this was later at night now, moving towards the nighttime. And John, we're in the hills of West Virginia, so this sucker was snowing.
Oh,
it was snowing good.
Okay, you got that lake effect snow.
Well, not quite the lake. We were just wheeling. Is down by Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, is where I was born and raised. But it was treacherous. Yeah. But I don't care because I enjoy driving in it. But now I'm pissed. Now I'm like all emotional, whatever. I'm like,
did you have like snow fences where you lived?
Snow fence? No, it wasn't
Okay.
drifts and stuff.
Where I lived in West Virginia, they had snow drifts, snow fences.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you were down by the ski resorts and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I did was
I didn't
was
mean to
driving.
interrupt you.
Okay, so I'm driving and I come around a bend and it's like downhill around a bend, so you have to turn left, and my speed was too much, and did a little fishtail, a little corrective measure to overcorrect, and just lost it. 360.
Oh my gosh.
Back end down a pretty dang steep hill, and just heard silence.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, what do I do now? Like, that's weird. I climbed up the bank. It was at nighttime. A guy gave me a ride home, thankfully, so I caught a hitch and got home. Told my mom I might have had my car go off the side of the road. She tripped out because we went there the next day to get the thing towed or whatever. John, it was a bank like that. It was like, just barely missed a big
At least you weren't on a...
I was okay. I had a big hole in my car. It hit a fence post and knocked it. I don't know, man. It was the angel was on my shoulder that particular night, and it was just not paying attention, just in my feels, emotional, sad for being rejected and whatever.
Yeah, so you overreacted.
Totally was not in acceptance. I was fighting it literally in my head on the way home. And when you're in that state of mind, like, what kind of poor decisions, John, do we make when we're fighting against the realities in our life?
But we have, both of us have clients, and so does Victoria. We have clients that are much older and than teenage years, and they still act and are reactive, and they make those
like teenagers.
Teenagers, right?
Yeah,
and you kind of expect a teenager to do it. They're just learning. They've just gotten their big Harley motorcycle, which is puberty, adolescence, and they don't know how to handle it.
Well, be careful. All the bike riders are going to be emailing us, John.
Well, there's nothing. No, it takes a real man or woman to ride a hog or a goldwing.
Oh yeah. No, I think that there's just a lot to all of that, and our emotions, whether we're, I've been talking with a few different people that are older. You'd call them elderly in my caseload right now. And, I've made the comments to both of them.
Seasoned.
John, they're well seasoned in life. And, for a while now, I've been kind of amazed at whatever stage of life that you're in. Call it the crush that I just described with Angie. Angie, if you ever listen to this, it was fine. You did what you needed to do. It was just a learning experience for me. But
Chris who?
What's that?
Chris who?
Chris, yeah. Be careful. Facebook's out there. Whether it's a high school crush like I had, or your first love lost in college, or you're 60 years married and you become a widower or a widow, those emotions that you feel are really, really the same level, the same. Like, our bodies change, but the way that we feel doesn't.
Right.
Which is why we can replicate the problems that we have over and over again for a lifetime, but we can also change them. But I'm just saying, when you go through a crush like that, it hurts. It's hard. So, of course, we act like teenagers, John. Our clients that are all grown up, they're still feeling.
Well, so when somebody, let's say they find love again later in life. Let's say they're widowed, or there's an unfortunate divorce, or in some cases a fortunate divorce because the life was so difficult. They feel like they can't ever have life again, and they meet somebody and they are light as a feather. They are joyful. They have a new leash on life, and they fall in love again, and they have all the
feelings,
all the pheromones, and all that going. Just
does that still happen when we're older? I hope.
Well, I'm recalling it, so I guess that's
yes is the answer.
So yes,
100%
yes. Yeah.
This is why people have affairs, John. Really,
Right.
This is why people feel like, oh, we've fallen out of love, and because they don't have the pheromones or whatever, and they meet somebody new, it's like, oh, well, you're supposed to be the one I'm with. You're my soulmate. It must have been, or these thoughts. It's like it's emotions.
I met a woman from Texas when I was at seminary, and she was going to seminary at the same time, and I won't say her name, but I fell so in love with her. Even that.
Or infatuated with her.
Well, it was infatuation. Yeah. Her pheromones, or whatever they call it. Pheromones. I actually was.
You loved them.
I loved them. When she broke up with me about 2 weeks later.
See on YouTube, everybody. You guys see John's face right now. Go to YouTube.
2 weeks later, I'm down and I'm heartbroken. I'm in the stacks of the library.
No. Oh no.
Academia. I smell. I have her odor. I smell it.
Oh wow.
And I go to a cart, because that was my job. I had to put books back in the library in the stacks. And she had checked the book out. It was her odor.
Oh, wow.
It was a tissue in there.
Oh, a tissue's in the book.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It affects us.
I'm smelling it now.
You can even smell it now.
And I am so lucky.
Oh man! Wow. That is experience.
It would have been a disaster for her.
It would have been. It would not have been a disaster for her. Yeah, it's just these are. Yeah, I mean that is living in the moment and being in the moment. It can be so powerful. And thank you, John. You just relived a moment that watching you relive that.
You saw me go.
Oh right? Yeah, you went. You were there.
Yeah, I was
there.
there.
I said, look at YouTube. His face is like Was I at the crushed face with Andrew?
Yes, you were.
I did?
I saw those sad puppy dog eyes
coming
up, clawing his way up on the snowbank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
what do I do now?
Chastened and defeated, crushed.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the world now, John. Okay. Bring me back here. The balance between accepting external circumstances and taking positive steps to change. This is what we're after. This is what we're trying to engage with. So again, we have to talk about the serenity prayer when we're talking about taking these kind of steps. It's just such great courage, such great power that's in these things when we try to control the things that we can control. So acceptance versus last week's topic, instead of falling into what was the word just a little bit ago? Resignation.
Resignation.
What about acceptance versus last week's topic? Avoidance.
Avoidance, yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't like to sit in something that we're fighting against.
Right.
And so I think that is an impetus towards last week's topic, where people are just avoiding at all cost that which is uncomfortable. Right?
Right. Right. I was just thinking, I've had a couple of my clients said that they didn't do dry January, but they're doing dry Lent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, they are abstaining or lessening the amount of alcohol that they're drinking.
Yeah. Can we lessen it instead of not drink it? Is that what we can do, John?
Well, that's what they say.
That's what they say. Neil just gave a big snort, and he's looking at me very knowingly. Yes, I'll come clean, John. I'm one of these people that's given up alcohol for Lent. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm playing that game. I figured it was a good thing for me to do.
It's not just you.
Yeah,
evidently there's something going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's in the air tonight.
Well, it's a song.
Yeah.
Phil Collins, I know that song.
Phil Collins, yeah. Miami Vice is when I was introduced to it.
I'm going to say it was between me and my creator.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me, because I'm not Catholic. I'm a Reformed Catholic is what I like to say. I've lost the Catholic guilt. I'm now Reformed, but I just felt like I was called. That was what I was supposed to do. So I'm not real happy about it. Actually, not enjoying that, but it's good for me.
Well, it's
letting go of control, John.
Yeah.
Just being
well, I gave up because I would have like a little glass of red wine with my meals, and I gave that up because because of my condition that I have right now, which is a neurological aspect of it. And
Yeah.
I needed to, and my neurologist said you need to just give it up.
Okay. Yeah.
And I haven't missed it, So
Haven't missed it?
for 6 months, yeah.
Oh, that's been a little while then.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're getting along.
Yeah, getting along. Yeah, my hands don't shake or anything like that. So
Okay. How do you help people get into a place, John, of action when they have been in and oftentimes come to us in an initial session just a major stuck spot? People that are stuck. I have a whole day conference that I present on, about stuck spots. Like it's a real nasty experience that somebody gets into. Isn't it?
So are you talking about CBT or REBT where you would actually go through and identify a stuck spot?
Right.
And then you would work out strategies to overcome those?
Essentially.
Yeah. And I think part of it is that I think it's unrealistic to think that you're going to undo that stuck spot the first time.
Oh, 100%. It's not a one-session deal. Oftentimes when people are stuck, they've been stuck and they're coming to you at last resort because they've been stuck for a long time. Many months, years more likely.
Yeah.
Lifetime up until that point.
And it's hard to
times.
see. And it's hard to see outside that worldview, basically, which gives you it puts blinders on you or goggles. You can't really see outside of yourself. And to step outside of that. I think it's tough.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what writing it down does sometimes.
So writing it down. So okay, let's transition and go there. Yeah, writing it down, and when you're in a state of gracious acceptance in action, what does that look like? Getting out of stuck spots. What does that look like? Yeah.
But acknowledging that there is an issue to do that, to see it. The other is to say, okay, a concept of perseverance, and that you are in a safe space, that nobody's going to judge you, because if you still are in that stuck space, you keep trying and you do it. Eventually.
Do what?
Eventually get out of that stuck space.
Well, hopefully
you rewrite it. Or there's a point where you say, okay, I can't do anything about this.
And accept it.
Yeah.
And then ironically, that's when things change. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Right?
Go ahead. No, I want you to go there because that's exactly right.
It's a paradox.
It's the one hand clapping in the air.
It really is a paradox that a lot of times we find, in working with people. Listen, guys, you feel like you're falling into a trap and going to be stuck if you lose your ability to make change or just accept something. But the paradox, which is something that happens that shouldn't be able to happen, when you really accept something and get at peace with it, that's actually something that you do that changes that situation.
Yeah, because you are doing something.
You're actually doing something.
Yeah. But instead of trying to do an external thing, let's say I want to stop drinking.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just going to I'm going to rely on my willpower, which is actually an other thing.
Or I'm going to move to another town.
I move to another town.
Change the thing that I'm using from alcohol to weed or from.
Well, I say the things people, domestic abusers, people that are victims, they're not perpetrators, but they might tend to go back to the same type of person over and over again. That they start to see a pattern, they have to change that,
right?
And they have to accept that that's something inside of them that they have to change.
And as step number one, I accepted that my life had become unmanageable as the first key to being able to make anything happen in way of change, which is the substance abuse theme. It's a major change, John. You know as well as I do, it's changing everything about your life. You can't really do that until you accept in the beginning that it's there. Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons why
paradox.
they have rehabilitation, drug and alcohol rehab, is that they go to kind of remote places, that they change the paradigm or their situation, and yet they see that, they have brought themselves there, but they don't have the place where they don't necessarily have to go back to the same set of friends, or that were not really their friends, that would keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we have to add mindfulness. We can't forget mindfulness in this conversation of what's gracious acceptance in practice.
Yeah.
How's that relate to mindfulness?
If you wish you were somewhere else and then you can't actually be in the now and accept yourself for who you are in the here and now. So if you're always wondering, if I just move somewhere, if I go somewhere else, you're not attending to your needs now. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's painful.
Yeah, it is.
And arguably self-inflicted.
Uh-huh.
So self-inflicted pain point by doing what? By doing what you described not to do, like being somewhere else and not being mindful in the moment.
Being out there.
I was just playing off you.
Playing, yeah. In other words, you project. If I only do this, and this, I'll be better. I have had a number of clients that deal with serious mental illness or other issues, and they're actually, well, if I just do this, then all my problems will go away. That doesn't. You still will have yourself in the end, and so you have to accept yourself. So it's a radical self-acceptance of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to throw another piece out there to frame us up with this thing that we're going to get back to real quick here in a moment, the primary provocative question, people want to say, well, when you're dealing with your kid, you just give corporal punishment. It's as simple as that. Uh-huh. But you miss so much of the ins and outs of all that's going on emotionally.
You're missing the kid.
The kid itself.
Right.
Themselves.
Well, the Romans and the Greeks, they called them its.
Kids were its. Yeah, and if you think about that, you just take that a step further, like, accepting a kid and accepting them doesn't necessarily mean it's okay whatever they do. Neil and I go back and forth with that with the love and logic strategy, which people loved that show, Neil. I don't know if you noticed that, by the way. Did you catch that? Oh, yeah, people were absolutely all over that particular show. I think it's because we made it spicy, Neil. Yeah, we had. He just. Yeah, he has. You have to listen to that episode, several back. But when you're dealing with your kid, you have to be in the moment with them, accepting them. But it doesn't mean everything that they do is okay. So when they have a major problem with alcohol, we'll talk about, right? So what else do we need to summarize? Let's. Well, I think we hit that enough. Let's go back to those original things, John, and see where you and I land.
Okay.
Should we just accept the person in our lives struggling with addiction? How do we process this? All this talk about gracious acceptance, but yet this spouse of yours is wrecking your life.
Right.
They're blacking out. They are, so nasty in their tone in fighting with you. It's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
So the most loving thing you could possibly do is erect develop some boundaries. And boundaries aren't rigid; they're flexible. And to be able to do that, and
codependent people have a hard time doing that, John.
Yeah, they do. They do.
They really do.
Yeah.
Go ahead further, though.
No. I was just trying to say, should we just accept the person? I think, should we accept the person in our life struggling with addiction? I would say yes. Should we just? No. Okay.
Oh, so we should accept them.
We should
we just accept them?
We accept.
I love what you're doing with that.
The essential nature of their personhood.
But not
all their garbage or all vitriol, their hatred or their anger or their self-loathing.
Dysfunction. The alcoholism is so overwhelming to a family system. So it's really a balance.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why a healthy, well-balanced family is therapy would be entering into to therapy or some sort of counseling situation that could be long-term. And you do it even if and say, okay, which might eventually lead to the family, in order to preserve its health, that other person might leave. The person that is
your spouse.
Is spouse. Yeah, the spouse.
And where do they go?
I think that's part of it. It would be give them every opportunity to go for therapy, to go for rehabilitation, to go to recovery, to enter into this, and but you can't take away the person's civil rights, at least in this society, this culture.
You know, here's the thing. I have oftentimes worked with people that have stuck with their partner, and it's almost kind of like it's one of these rare situations, Sean, where I imagine you and I could agree, you know, they need to leave the relationship. Now, I would never suggest directly you need to leave the marriage. It's not something that I would say. We don't tell people what to do in our field. But if somebody's a domestic violence victim and it comes down to safety issues, you know, I'm going to say you need to get safe. You are not safe in this. We need to figure out
and that's
a plan.
one of the things you do is that there, and one would be even be able to help that person, walk that person through going to a shelter such as Catherine's Place,
right,
for example.
So my point is, though, there are these kind of circumstances that are kind of clear. A lot of times really revolving around safety, sexual promiscuity, sexual addiction. You know, there are different factors that really, you know, you don't need to tolerate. You need to get out. A bad relationship is bad. Where is addiction in that? You know, if your partner is such, in my mind, John, a kind of a gray area. You know, it's not a very clear cut thing, like your husband is hitting you, you need to get away. You're not safe here. However, it's really, really destroying, you know, a lot about your life together. So how do you traverse that? You know, it's really, really tough to make that call for a spouse, isn't it?
Yeah.
To leave them, or that they have to leave, or, you know, that you're not safe with the kids. Yeah. But again, safety comes into that.
Yeah. So you're going to do the safety dance. No, that's a bad pun.
A bad pun, John.
Yeah. Another dad pun.
Let me rescue you from the pun. What about the kid? It's the same thing with the kid, right?
Right.
This child.
Well, I think if you had let me ask you this: if it came to your primary duty with an underage child,
is tough.
Do you protect? You try to put up in terms of the spouse's addiction. Or do you do what is best for the child? What is your greater responsibility?
Well, your greatest responsibility is to self. God, self, spouse, kids, family, friends, and work in that order. Right. But when you're talking about protecting the children,
if you're worried about the safety of your child,
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now the other thing is, what do you do with a child that is
exactly
okay?
That's where I thought you were going.
No. Well, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, because they're the addict kids. Doing drugs, they're wrecking the home. They're doing that as well.
If they're an adult child,
sometimes they're definitely adult.
You don't have the
30 years old living at home.
Right.
You know, what do you do with that?
Well,
have you ever come across that in therapy, John?
Yes, I have, and I've got a step parent who is having to deal and work with a child that's addicted to drugs and is now bedridden because of that addiction.
Yeah.
And that was because mom and the family dynamic was that they could, in a way, they made him into the identified patient, and he became he became totally unable to take care of and care for himself because he's so degenerated physically.
Yeah.
With that addiction.
Yeah.
And there's never been a needle in his arm, but there's always been
something.
Pills.
Some sort of pill, yeah. It's my landing spot that I have gotten to this, and I guess it's the same landing spot for the spouse, but over many years of tantalizing myself and working with people in different situations. And, one particular person I worked with for a long time and still living with her son, who has the addiction problem and other things. You cannot tell a parent they have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the landing spot that I get with a spouse, I guess as well, I haven't really done this so directive as I have with kids. I landed on with parents like, look, it is reasonable to allow your child to stay home and give them nothing but shelter and food for the purpose of, living, for survival. Right. And now that's nothing else of any preferential stuff. We're not talking about running out and all the codependent
You're
stuff.
being practical.
It's just practical. You have shelter and food as long as you live, as long as I'm living, little Johnny or little Sally, even if you have addiction. It's also reasonable to not provide even those two basic survival needs for your child.
It
is reasonable to say you cannot stay here.
Okay. If the child is stealing from you, if and is abusing you and physically abusing you, I mean, there's another issue.
Yeah, that's
what about
a different issue. But
all right, let's say if there's a child, because we had a little discussion about schizophrenia, for example.
Yeah.
Earlier today, you and I did, and there was a woman and a husband and a wife who had a son, and he was having active symptoms of schizophrenia. He would often self-medicate with alcohol, and he also did not take his medications, and his family kept him in the house. And this is by far ended up he became violent, and this is the great minority of cases with schizophrenia, but he became violent and he actually killed his father.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And what do you do? And so in that point, it would have been prudent to but I think part of the laws, and when society and laws even go against putting your child, the most loving thing is to have them go into an institution.
The stakes are real.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that people are dealing with, and they know that they're just that kind of close. Mm-hmm. You can feel it that your kid has addiction or schizophrenia or something like that, and safety becomes an issue. I tell you, I will say this. I have learned long ago, and I've repeated it many times, there's some conference, some dude somewhere said it, and I'm so appreciative because safety above all else is what he said. Mm-hmm. Safety comes first above all else. Mm-hmm. And that has applied itself in just so many different ways over the course of practicing, therapy with people, right? So, I think that's where we land on is safety comes first, but it's reasonable to stay with them or have your kid have shelter and food. It's also reasonable to straight not. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of managing all of that, we've talked about the boundaries, and gracious acceptance is still a thing that can be had, even if you have to get the kid gone.
You have to thread the needle.
Yep.
And that's the thing, and so it's not for the weak of heart.
No.
So
challenging.
Yeah,
like I hate that phrase, tough love. But everyone knows what tough love means. Mm-hmm. I just feel like it's just a weird word combination.
I like tainted love.
Tainted love. Tainted love. All right. Well, have we answered the questions? Where are you at, John? Any lingering thoughts in your mind?
Yeah, I think that sometimes the most loving thing one can do is to say it stops here, and that someone that you love would have to leave, but you doesn't mean that you stop loving them. You give them every opportunity to grow, and at the same time you're challenging yourself as well to see if there's any other alternative. It's like being on a hill and you see your child way far out from the distance, and they're doing things that you don't like, that doesn't mean that you're not praying for them and loving them and reaching out to them.
Yeah, graciously accepting.
Graciously accepting.
All right, you know what time it is now, John, don't you?
Oh, okay.
It is time for the shrink wrap-up. That is the way we decided to end our shows, where each host shares a key takeaway on how practicing gracious acceptance can improve mental well-being and relationships. And Neil gets to decide who, I guess.
Oh, God,
Oh, yes, John, come on. And competitive makes it love. You need to come up, Neil, and be thinking about, like, what are we looking for? How do we get the win? Rock, paper, scissors. John, go first. Or you just want to go?
I'll go.
All right.
That is,
kill it.
I think the second part of the serenity prayer, where it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can't, but also accepting the hardships as that pathway to growth and to change. Okay? So in other words, it's a dynamic. Okay? In other words, it's a fine line. You walk the edge.
I think this is going to happen with me and you when we're doing our shrink wrap-ups, John. We key in on the same thing.
Okay.
Because my wrap-up has got to be the serenity prayer, too.
Yeah.
I mean, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think that has everything to do with the boundaries that we've talked about and the fighting. And when you're fighting something, chapter 11,
Bankruptcy.
You go in deficits, man.
Yeah.
But you can't mess with my shrink wrap up. It's just such a challenge to find yourself to stop resisting and fighting, because the world will break you.
Right.
The gracious acceptance is accepting, yourself.
Okay. That's good. I think basically, and just another wrap up is that
he's doing an addendum, Neil. What's
the
ruling on that?
You're looking at it. We're looking at it the same thing at two different sides. So that's the only thing.
Got you, Neil. What do we got?
Really good. See, when you guys do it, you guys, like, as Victoria put it, you guys are very robust for your 2-sentence wrap ups, right?
Well,
and they're so
paragraph.
they're
We're
so
gonna call it a
deep and they're so poignant. I would say in this case, I think I gotta go with John again.
Oh.
The acknowledging the hardships and those types of things, I think, is a big part of it to me. Like, I understand because you guys both want this sort of, but I like the idea that you have to accept that there are going to be hardships that's going to be towards your path. And I think going through the idea that gracious acceptance is going to be easy or that whatever, like, I like the fact that that's something that John brought up, because it is going to be a hard path that you take if that's the way you're
very
gonna
true.
go.
Good point. I appreciate that, Neil. Look, gracious acceptance is something that we hopefully have taken the mystery out a little bit for you. Congratulations, Sean, by the way.
No, it's fine. You're going to be next time. Or
Victoria,
she needs one. She needs a win.
We'll get the win. Listen, gracious acceptance is something that isn't very easy. It isn't almost even natural sometimes. And so hopefully we've taken the veil off of that a little bit and helped you to understand, so that in your relationship with yourself and in the relationship with people that you care about and that are close to you, that you can extend and have extended to you this concept of gracious acceptance in the moment, being with people. This is what we need more of in the world. Loneliness is an epidemic. There's so much division, divisiveness, strife. Love one another. Some people will say, graciously accept yourself and others. Hopefully we're taking the mystery out so that you can execute that a little bit more in your daily life. So we will see you next week. Take care, be well, and we'll see you then.
See you.